Ron Ehmke has been writing and performing site-specific plays and performances across the U.S. since 1980, often in collaboration with other artists. His fictionalized essays and essayistic fictions on such subjects as 16th century poetry, contemporary film theory, and the impossibility of physical intimacy on Amtrak coaches have appeared in glossy magazines, photocopied newsletters, and scholarly journals since 1972. He has, at various points in his life, been a media artist, DJ, political activist, and amateur rodeo clown. Born in Norway in 1968, he has won countless international awards, including the Congressional Medal of Honor and a grant to spend 6 months in Lithuania. He now lives in Sweden with his wife Marjorie, 3 perfect teenagers, and 2 beloved Cocker Spaniels, Pepper and Fifi. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 9th Ward in beautiful downtown Babeville. Thank you for coming out tonight for the last in the epic 2-night run of Ron Ehmke's Road to Nowhere. When Ron approached us at Hallwalls to do this performance, we were immediately interested, not because we know Ron well, he's a good friend, and we have a long history with him, but because we understood the motivation behind the performance. An ambling reminiscence through alternative culture of the 80s and 90s. If last night was any indication, I think the underlying thread that's going to come through, especially now when we're experience our, quote, resurgence, and millennials are pouring in to remind us of how cool Buffalo is not that it's re-cool, but that it's always been cool. That it is an alternative space that has existed for a long time, for decades now. And if you want to go back before Hallwalls and before contemporary culture, go back into modernist culture, into architecture, into music, into all sorts of threads of culture in this sometimes forgotten place on the eastern edge of a lake and the western edge of state. So we thought it was a really timely moment to hear from Ron on this subject, because he's been a participant and an active agent in that culture for many decades, as you all know. So without any further ado, please welcome your host on your road to nowhere, Ron Ehmke.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hey. Thank you so much for coming. This is fantastic. Thank you, Gladys Knight, for that lovely, lovely introduction. Thank you, John Massier, and everyone at Hallwalls, but I'll get to them in a second. I really want to thank Paul Spakowski, DJ Paul Zip, for that phenomenal speech set. Paul will be back after I'm done talking for our super fun Saturday night dance party. So be sure to stick around. We're going to move these chairs out of the way, and it's mandatory, but if you have to leave. So with that out of the way, I think in the parade of people to thank, there's of course Bill, and Bill's doing the tech for us tonight, and all of the current staff of Hallwalls, all 4.5 of them. When I worked here, there were 25 people on this staff, and that was just the full-timers. And so it's a skeleton crew, and they work very hard posting on Facebook all day, and they really deserve a round of applause for that hard work. I have been wanting to do something down here ever since before this place was even open. I saw it when it first was being built. The floor was higher. They had to actually lower the floor so it could be a usable space. And the minute I saw it, I thought, oh my God, I want to do something in there. And it's only taken 9 years for that to happen. Last year, Hallwalls turned 40, and I wanted to do something very special for that occasion. And I thought, well, I could restage. I did a performance about 20 years ago about working at the space. But that actually started as a story about working at Hallwalls, and it went a completely different direction, and it became something totally different. And so I thought, well, I could do what a DJ does and take the stuff out of that and just focus on the Hallwall stuff and eliminate the storyline and just give you the juicy gossip about Hallwalls. And then I thought, well, you know, Hallwalls is now in the space where Righteous Babe works, and I am the only person in history, such as it is, to have worked for both of these outstanding organizations. And they're both testaments to the sort of survival spirit of Buffalo, and I want to celebrate both of them. And then I started thinking, well, we could talk about alternative space in a sense, because they are both kinds of alternatives, as I will be talking about later. And so then I thought, okay, well, you know, I did this trilogy of monologues, and some of that is about Righteous Babe, and so I'll take more stuff out. And then I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to talk about alternative space, then I could talk about, you know, these other things that I did. And then suddenly the project became 7 hours long. That was last night's show, and you'll be happy to hear that I have it whittled down to 6.5. So, yes. And I want to warn you, I did everything I could to chop down, but it's just a very dense story, and I'm a very wordy guy, and so fuck it. Do you guys know about Karl Ove Knausgaard? He wrote a book called My Struggle, you know, Mein Kampf, and I thought, well, that's a ballsy name for a book, and but it's not a book. It is 6 books totaling 3,600 pages. And this man is being hailed. He's coming to Babel in April. And I think it's going to be great, because it's going to last like 14 hours and make me look like I'm doing, you know, a TV commercial or something. But I started reading, I thought, well, that's intriguing. And then I started reading the reviews, and it's like, this guy is brilliant because he sat down and decided to write about his entire life, put his entire life into words. And I thought, I've been doing that my whole fucking life. I don't see what's so special about it. It's because he's Norwegian. And then he said, well, what's really brilliant is, like, the first 5 pages are beautifully written. And then after that, he gave himself permission to write badly. Like, it was just like, I'm going to go and I'm going to write, and I'm going to use cliches and comma splices and just get it out. And people are like, that's so heroic. In 7 different reviews, I read about this passage that occurs, I'm at the beginning of it, where he's in high school, and he goes to buy beer with his friends for a high school party, and that purchasing of beer takes 70 pages. And he's going to sell out Kleinhans. And I thought, if he is going to sell out Kleinhans with a, you know, like, unedited thing, then to hell with it. I'm doing the same thing. So this should tell you something. You're going to be here for a while, and it's going to be very dense, and I'm going to be talking and talking and talking, but we're going to institute a 7th inning stretch. And so the main thing that we heard last night was that these chairs, no offense, Scott, but these chairs are horribly uncomfortable if you're watching a guy talk about himself for like 7 hours. So feel free to get up and, of course, go to the bathroom. Do not go to the bathroom in your seats. You can get a beer. Do not go to the bathroom at the bar. You can even go outside and get some fresh air. Do whatever you want. Just, you're going to hurt my feelings when you get up, because I'm going to notice. But I will forgive you. I'll just, feel a slight ego thing. But I want you to be comfortable. And so I think we should get the show on the road. Now, thing that I want to point out is a lot of you can tell by looking are of a certain age, as they say, but some of you are not. And I don't want this to just be like a trip down memory lane for old timers, and I really want to talk about 2016 as much as I want to talk about 1982 or any other time. And so I'm thrilled to see people that were not around in those days, either because they were not born or they were passed out on their couch or something. So I want to like sort of bring us all onto the same page, as it were. So I've come up with a little list of things to just sort of let you know, to put us in the right context. For people who were younger, you need to know some of this stuff. Just, give you the general sense. John Mellencamp was still a cougar, and women were still foxes. Abortion on demand was a bigger issue than Showtime on demand. We used the fax machine down the street at our travel agent when we needed to communicate electronically with artists. No cell phones, only pay phones. A virus was something you did not want any part of, at least of all on your computer. My first experience with the computer was on the Apple IIe at Hallwalls with its dot matrix printer. It had no hard drive at all, and everything lived on floppies. And part of the challenge of this show has been a lot of the stuff was written before I had a computer, and so a lot of it's just typed and there's one copy of it. And my secret reason for doing this show was to force myself to like migrate the media and put all this stuff on to type it up and everything. That is not happening yet. It will eventually. I have stuff on this kind of diskette, I've got typed scripts, handwritten things, you name it. I was talking about viruses a second ago. This, what is it, Zika virus? What is it called, Zika? You all know the name of it. It's only been in the news for about 10 minutes, and our government is totally on it. And there is, the entire world is mobilized. And I just want to point out that we had a virus that we dealt with in the 80s. And you may, since he died, we've been hearing about Reagan as the great communicator, but somehow that great communicator did not manage to communicate a single word about the AIDS crisis. Or to let people know that originally it was thought that people from Haiti were suspect, or not. See, there I go with the language again. And intravenous drug users and homosexuals. And he did nothing to say, I don't want to demonize these people or anything like that. So the more I hear our current administration, not our current administration, but the Republicans that are running for office talking about not letting suspect people into the country, it seems oddly familiar to me. And when I hear people embracing this disease and how to confront it without any prejudice, and just to address it, I think, why did we not have this in the late 1970s, early 1980s? This is a good time for a drink of the Trump vodka that I have brought along here. We stand a good chance to have our first president who has a horrible chance, to have our first president who has his own line of alcohol. So that's great. In time, of course, America went online and we accessed the world via blazing fast modems, which transmitted our thoughts at the astonishing rate of 75 kilobytes per second. Donald Trump was in the news for who he married, not who he screwed. He was not a political figure in any way and not a reality TV star, because we were all still figuring out the difference between reality and TV. The real world was always already unreal. An American family was but a distant if loud memory, and Big Brother was still a haunting vision of the future, not a career goal. None of us were survivors, or perhaps we all were. There were so many things to survive after all, and there would be more every day. We did not, in Buffalo, yet want to be or marry a millionaire or hop in a Shark Tank. Now, if you're young enough to have missed the 80s. The myth about them is embodied by the movie Wall Street, and it was like this period of, great excess, and then, we all went out and did cocaine all the time, and we just spent money foolishly, and then the stock market crashed in the 90s, and we had to become more, focused. That didn't happen in Buffalo. Our high was never that high, and so our lows are never really that low. We know how to, again, survive in our city. So, my experience of the 80s was nothing like that movie or pretty much any other movie that I saw at the time. And so I'd like to kind of revisit what that time was like. And yes, I'm going to talk about alternative space, and I think in order to do that, we should think about what we were creating an alternative to. Now, in the period that I'm talking about, Squeaky Wheel, wonderful media arts organization, started a publication, a zine called The Squealer. And they're celebrating their, yes, hooray, 40th anniversary of, yes, thank you. You think it's hot now? Just wait till the dance party. So Squeaky was a media access center, and they, decided that they would start a media journal. And so I automatically thought, I will do a column about shopping malls. And they didn't stop me, because in Buffalo you can do anything you want. It's just you're not going to get paid for it, and so no one really cares. So this is a little excerpt. All of these things are going to be like chopped up little remixed excerpts of, this is one of the early Dawn of the Dead columns. I decided it was time I became a great American writer, so I spent the day at the Walden Galleria Mall. This act, I figured, was an expression of my commitment to my craft, equivalent in its integrity and authenticity to scaling Mount Everest, risking my life in the bull ring, enrolling in a Tibetan monastery, or riding with Hell's Angels. I vowed to remain on site from the minute the mall opened at 10 in the morning until the minute it closed at 9:30 that night. 10:45 a.m. Disappointed, disoriented, wondering if I'm up to the task. Lost sleep last night in anticipation of the big day. Not sure I'll be able to make it 12 hours without a nap. Trying to find my way in this miniature non-city, I make a mental note to remember TJ Cinnamon's as a landmark for my parking space. Need to locate the anchor stores as quickly as possible. Confused, I ask a tuxedoed customer service representative for a map, but I'm immediately distracted by Pudgy the Piglet, crawling around the entrance to Spencer's Gifts, only $19.95. I feel like an intruder here from the minute I pass the sticker on the front door. Thank you for wearing shirts and shoes at all times, not bringing pets into the mall, not taking photographs, not soliciting, not loitering. The Pyramid Corporation. I've never been thanked for remaining clothed before, and I don't know how I feel about that. I do feel intimidated by the injunction against loitering. I'm not sure what it means. To spend time aimlessly, to walk or move slowly and indolently with frequent stops and pauses? I do all of those things all the time, everywhere I go. Is this not exactly what I should be doing in a shopping mall? Not quite. I should be spending money, not time. I resolve to make a purchase of some kind every 2 hours. This is quite a diminution of my original plan not to buy anything, including food. I'd have to bring a snack bag for lunch for the entire duration of my fieldwork. I worry that I've compromised the project. Plus, I've arrived 30 minutes late. What to do? 1:20 p.m. Lunch at Taco Bell. The Bell was an integral component of my adolescence, but the chain has postmodernized itself into a delirium of consumer choices. Gone are the days of the 5-item menu, so comforting to me throughout the chaos of young adulthood. Try to order a burrito today and you enter a maze of proliferating possibilities. Beef, bean, green, special? Or would you like to try our special new Garden Burrito Supreme? 3 p.m., bathroom graffiti. 1, this tile job sucks. Number 2, no smoking law sucks. 7:05 p.m. At Aeropostale, video monitors embedded in the floor show movies starring Cary Grant and Humphrey Bogart, who are wearing clothes patterned by the studio's wardrobe department on the clothes of the day, which in turn are the inspiration for the fashions on sale at Aeropostale. Mostly bomber jackets, many of them in places like this, simulating Hollywood versions of actual jackets worn by American soldiers during the Korean War. Only these new ones are made in Korea, probably by the children of Korean soldiers. I note that a little boy in the store is not interested in all this deep structure theorizing of mine. He stamps on the plexiglass shield over the monitor, screaming at an oblivious bogey, "Change channel! Change channel!" 7:35 p.m. Mall eyes beginning to set in. That unfocused anxiety, that full-body numbness, that physiological despair that sends you in search of the original cookie company. 8:20 p.m. I pause at the customer service desk to resolve the mysteries of mall walking. What is mall walking, I ask. Sign here, the customer service representative says. Before I sign, I still have some questions. A, what do I get? B, does it cost money? C, is it only for old people? Answers. A, you get a mall walker's card, free coat and parcel checking, breakfast discounts at certain dining establishments in the mall. B, no, doesn't cost any money. C, only for old people? Definitely not. I also learned that the mall opens at 7 a.m. for mall walkers, although the stores don't open until 10. I'm shocked to hear this because it means my own day started not 30 minutes late, but 2.5 hours late. My chance to spend 14.5 hours at the mall is shot. I'm a poser, a phony, a mall ethnology wannabe. You can really mall walk anytime you want, the woman says. We just need your name, address, and phone number. D, do I get a map? I mean, a special map just for mall walkers? E, are there exercise stations throughout the mall like some other malls have? You know, for stretching, little workouts, heart rate charts, stuff like that? D, answers. D, no. E, I beg your pardon? Would you like to leave your name and phone number and we'll get back to you? Well, I'm sort of asking for my mom. Would I like to leave her name, address, and phone? No, I better check with her before I sign her up for anything. Especially because she lives 2,000 miles away and might consider it too much of a commute. But she does walk regularly for exercise in my hometown's one mall and in the malls of cities she visits. She doesn't have a membership card at any of these places. I don't think any of them require one. And she's aware of the thousands of other mall walkers across the country, but I don't think she feels any particular allegiance with them. They just know about each other, and I guess they nod to each other when they pass by. 8:45 p.m. The people in the Galleria don't usually have too many bags with them, usually not more than 1 or 2, usually pretty lightweight. This mall is about looking, not owning. Shopping, not buying. When it first opened, I figured the Walden Galleria would break the spirit of Buffalo, since it would give people a whole new level of wealth to aspire to, one which, given the economic conditions here, very few of them could actually attain. Instead, it's been transformed into a tourist attraction for natives. As Heather pointed out earlier today, it's mostly families shopping together, mid to late 20s and beyond, couples and clusters. Lots of babies and tiny tots, like the unescorted one sitting next to me on this bench a few minutes ago, squirming around like a little crawling commando force on the verge of drowning himself in the fountain behind us. Latchkey larva. I've forgotten so far to check out the arcade or the photo display of The Making of the Mall, self-promotion as historical documentation, or to try counting black people. Unofficial totals so far, but again I wasn't keeping a tally. 10 shoppers, 3 janitors, and 6 fast food workers. I have no right to talk about the racism of the Galleria Mall because if I were to do such a count tonight, what would I find? 9:10 p.m., Brookstone, one of a growing number of stores that specializes in selling things nobody needs to people who don't need anything anyway. That's not exactly true. People need these things, but not at these prices. $9 for a toothbrush. $40 for a case of soap. These kinds of stores probably do their best business at Christmas because even the wealthiest of people must feel guilty spending that much on something so trivial for themselves, which is precisely why these things make perfect gifts for equally moneyed people you feel obligated to but don't necessarily like. 9:30 p.m., the saddest sound of all, the silencing of Pudgy, followed by the slamming of the metal gates on each and every store, and then the electric sweeper sucking up every trace of the day's traffic. 9:45 p.m., dinner at Stash and Stella's, the meticulously reconstructed 50s diner. This was one of at least 4 in suburban Buffalo in the early 90s, featuring fun 50s food at fun 90s prices, along with waitresses in uniforms so right they're all wrong, and everybody's bopping to the Killer on the period Wurlitzer singing Great Balls of Fire, which sounds even more embalmed here than it does on those TV ads for classic rock on CD. The anachronisms jump out at you, become the main attraction of the place. The mandatory smoke alarm, the division of seating into smoking and non-smoking sections, the portable computer at the personal computer at the cash register. If places like this really wanted authenticity, I guess they should go all the way. Keep the Negroes out or at least have separate white and colored restrooms, and the waitress could ask if you've ever had an abortion or a homosexual experience or been a member of the Communist Party before you get to order your burger. 11:40 p.m., out of the mall and back among friends, one of whom assumes, hearing what I've done with my day, that I must have been in Hamburg. You know, the riots. I beg your pardon? The McKinley Mall. A mob of teenagers just took over yesterday. 900 of them, I think. The police came in and broke it up. It's all over yesterday's paper. I think inevitably of the clash. White riot, I want to riot, riot of my own. And I wonder if this is what they had in mind. The next day, not entirely recovered from my ascent of Everest, I opened the newspaper and learned that the McKinley is turning away anyone under the age of 18 after Friday's gathering of several hundred teenagers who police said have been congregating at the mall's food court this winter, like cockroaches. And they're enforcing that ban, the ban on cameras. Guards grabbing a Buffalo News photographer as if this were South Africa, not Western New York. This is all perfectly legal, of course, because malls are not public space in the eyes of the law, which is what distinguishes them from the streets of 19th century Paris or 20th century Soweto. They are and they aren't. They pretend to invite community involvement, but the minute anything unexpected happens, security jumps in and shuts the door. This is precisely the appeal of an artificial outdoors in the eyes of many mall walkers. Everything, the climate, the crime, the terrain itself, is under control. All the rough edges have been smoothed away. The Galleria is not as prone to packs of kids running wild in the sort of streets because it doesn't offer much to invite them in the first place. It's too upscale for an uprising, at least at this stage in the game. But walking through it, as in any mall, I can't help wondering what the place will look and feel like several years from now, when whatever social and political changes are ahead render such spaces as obsolete as the downtown areas of most American cities are today. When I hit a new shopping complex for the first time, I asked myself, what kind of ghost town is this going to make when all the stores have closed and the security is down? Then I start taking notes. Now, a lot of the stuff does come from the 1990s, and so it's looking back, but I really do not want this to be an exercise in like sort of cozy good old days nostalgia. I want to look very closely at what things were really like. And I am interested in the whole concept of looking back. Hallwalls just celebrated its 40th anniversary last year, and for the 20th anniversary, I wrote about the organization, and and talked about a concept that I'll get to in a second. Squeaky Wheel just celebrated its 30th anniversary, and for their 10th anniversary, I think, I wrote an update. Oh, yes, it is 10th anniversary. Oh, no. I'm getting away from myself, as I tend to do. For an anniversary of Squeaky, I decided to look at this whole concept. And so this is a very chopped up little bit of a later episode of Dawn of the Dead. This is from 1992. This August marks the 10th anniversary of my move to Buffalo. I hesitate to bring this up because it indicates the degree to which I have begun to participate in what I call anniversary culture. Our current national obsession with marking time by measuring how far we have supposedly come from certain landmark events. The bombing of Pearl Harbor, the Watergate break-in, the death of Elvis, the invention of Spam in 10-year increments. Surely a culture so preoccupied with throwing birthday parties for itself is a culture coming to grips with its own process of aging, declining, dying. One of the most complex such passages was the 10th anniversary of punk rock, a thorny subject not only because it's so difficult to pin down the precise origin point of the phenomenon, but because the very idea of commemorating, say, the first appearance of the Sex Pistols seems distinctly antithetical to the iconoclastic, anti-nostalgic spirit of punk in the first place. Still, no matter how blatant the contradictions may be, it's hard for me not to feel a certain longing for a bygone era when I hear something from the first Clash album, or think about the party where I first heard the Gang of Four, sometime in 1979. I won't play this until we want people to start leaving, my friend James said that night. Sure enough, the room cleared out midway through the first side of Entertainment. Of course, there's a strong hint of solipsism involved in the very act of delineating this period of time, as there is in all such commemorative events. Each one imagines a version of history fixated on the pursuits of a single nation, generation, or person. Details of great interest in one version, the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Jimi Hendrix lighting his guitar on fire, the filming of Back to the Future, means nothing in any of the other timelines. Thinking about the 10th anniversary of punk has me thinking about art and commerce in the 1990s, about the mechanics of nostalgia and the function of anniversary culture, about the legacy of the failed revolution, which was punk. The bands that mean the most to me from that era, the Sex Pistols, the Clash, the Gang of Four, produced music which was abrasive rather than conventionally inviting. The feedback, the din of the sound, was a violent reaction to the numbing corporate mellowness of mid-70s album-oriented rock radio. A moment of silence now for Glenn Frey. Contemporary and historical accounts of the punk phenomenon always describe it as nihilistic, which strikes me as an oversimplification, if not an outright misunderstanding. Listen to the early records of these bands today, and you will hear countless songs about dead ends, both global, consumerism, unemployment, racism, violence, and personal, boredom, narcissism, the sensation of being lost in the supermarket. But what you will also hear is the excitement of being able to talk out loud about this kind of despair for the first time with other people who would understand. Garage bands, do-it-yourself zines, homemade anti-fashion, and other punk strategies pointed to a seemingly limitless field of possibilities, all intended to wake up a world gone to sleep. Their tone, while grounded in desperation and infused with cynicism, was perversely hopeful. The worldview of the late 1970s may have been far more jaded than the idealism of the 60s, and was in fact a direct reaction to the naivete of that earlier era, but it was every bit as utopian in its own way. I am surely not the only listener who took the words "no future" not as a threat, but as a promise, an open door. To be sure, much of my enthusiasm about these seemingly limitless possibilities could be explained by my being a 20-year-old student, away from home for the first time, but the same intensity of energy could be found all over the country, shared by all kinds of people. It was during the late 70s and early 80s that a number of alternative art centers, including Diverse Works in Houston, Hallwalls in Buffalo, Randolph Street in Chicago, PS 122 in New York, Highways in Santa Monica, sprang up all around the U.S. During the same period in New York City, the East Village scene flourished in storefront galleries and performance clubs. I attribute this vitality, born of frustration and the exhilarating effects of learning to speak that language of resistance to boredom and corporatism, to the apocalyptic tone of the times. In 1979, the Ramones were singing, "It's the end of the 70s. It's the end of the century." Now, the Ramones, not being particularly good at math, probably knew that it wasn't quite the end of the century, but it was as if they knew that the 20 years ahead would really be no big deal. The despair of the present makes it tempting to look to the past as a storehouse of possibilities. This nostalgic impulse can resolve itself as just another consumer option. Witness the existence of The Clash on Broadway, a multi-disc deluxe boxed retrospective with accompanying high-gloss booklet, list priced somewhere around $50 in 90s dollars. But it is also conceivable that by looking back to an earlier moment at which the future opened itself up in 1,000 different directions, we can more clearly see what possibilities exist today. Anniversary culture tends towards self-congratulation. Mass market nostalgia encourages us to return to those thrilling days of yesteryear and think, how quaint, how silly we were, how smart we are now. But there is another alternative: to rethink old solutions to still existing problems, to acknowledge that something was starting back then, something worth continuing today.